If the universe could ever take a shortcut, time would have found it first. The thought lingers, soft and heavy, like a feather falling in a vacuum. Every star, every atom, every heartbeat you've ever felt owes its existence to that single refusal: time's unwillingness to cheat. No matter how far we peer into the darkness between galaxies, no matter how deeply we fall into the mouth of a black hole, no matter how far we travel inside our own memories, time never skips. It walks, one steady footstep after another, always forward, never sideways, never back. It's a strange thing to realize. The most powerful force in the universe doesn't rush. It doesn't stumble. It doesn't lose its way. It simply keeps going, as if it knows something we don't. Every sunrise, every wrinkle on a hand, every silent decay of a distant star is a confession that time has passed through, quietly but irreversibly. Tonight, we're going to follow it, to see where it leads, and maybe understand why it never takes a shortcut. Close your eyes for a moment and listen to the sound of your own breath. That's time moving, soft, invisible, certain. We think of it as a ticking clock or numbers flashing on a digital screen, but those are just our ways of taming it. Time itself has no sound, no color, no smell. It's the silent current beneath everything, moving us forward even when we stand still. Now picture a long corridor stretching beyond sight. The air is still, faintly golden, like sunlight filtered through dust. You take a step, and a faint echo trails behind. The door behind you closes with a quiet click, locked forever. Ahead, another door waits. You move again, and the same thing happens. Door after door, moment after moment, sealed the instant you pass through. That is time, a one-way hallway built by the universe itself. No matter how much we beg or bargain, it never lets us go back. There's something hauntingly fair about that. Everything in existence obeys it equally. Galaxies, people, particles of dust. It's the only law that doesn't need enforcement. The planets spin, the tides rise, our lives unfold, all because time keeps the rhythm. Without it, motion wouldn't mean anything. There would be no before, no after. Only a shapeless silence where nothing ever changes. Yet, it's almost cruel in its beauty. Every joy is fleeting. Every sorrow eventually fades, because time demands it. A flower opens, trembles for a day, and then collapses back into the soil that birthed it. A child's laughter fills the air for an instant, then dissolves into memory. Even stars, those immense furnaces burning for billions of years, eventually cool into darkness. Everything that lives must surrender to the forward march. Sometimes people ask whether time could move differently, maybe faster in one place, slower in another, maybe even backward. But time doesn't care for our imagination. It doesn't leap over moments to spare us pain. It doesn't rewind to let us taste happiness again. It simply continues, patient and silent, like a river that refuses to freeze. Yet for all its patience, it's strangely fragile. A single second can feel endless when you're waiting, or vanish when you're in love. A year can slip by unnoticed, then return in a rush of nostalgia that aches deep in your bones. Time bends not in physics first, but in perception, our human way of trying to hold something that can never be held. The universe doesn't measure time in minutes or hours. It measures it in change, in the birth of a photon, the death of a star, the slow cooling of a planet. That's why we only ever see time moving forward, because the universe itself is unfolding. Every particle is just following the script of cause and effect, written in the fabric of existence long before we came to read it. It's easy to mistake time for a simple line, yesterday to today to tomorrow. But it's more like a melody that never repeats exactly, always evolving, always reshaping itself in the next note. We may want to skip ahead to the chorus, but the song insists on being played in full. Without the slow build, there's no meaning to the crescendo. Maybe that's why time feels sacred, not because it's infinite, but because it isn't. We feel its edge pressing gently against everything we love. We watch our parents age, our children grow, our cities change, and something inside us understands. This flow is the price of being alive. If time ever took a shortcut, we would lose the very texture of existence, the suspense, the memory, the story itself. When we look at the night sky, we're looking back. The light of distant stars travels for millions of years before it reaches our eyes. What we see is not how they are, but how they were. The universe itself gives us proof that the past is untouchable, preserved only in light, never to be changed. In a way, the stars are the universe's diary, Pages written long ago, still glowing faintly in the dark. Yet, for all this certainty, time remains mysterious. We can measure it, calculate it, even slow it down with speed or gravity, but we can't escape it. Not even light can outrun it. The most we can do is move with it, one breath at a time. So the next time you pause between seconds, that tiny space between what was and what will be, realize you're standing in the doorway of time itself, a threshold that never opens backward. Every heartbeat, every inhale, every blink is a door closing softly behind you. Still, there's something tender about that. Each closed door means you've lived another moment that will never happen again. A proof that you were here, that time passed through you as much as you passed through it. We live our whole lives walking this invisible corridor, curious about what's ahead, nostalgic for what's behind, never noticing that the journey itself is the point. Maybe time never takes shortcuts because shortcuts rob us of the quiet unfolding, the part where meaning grows slowly, like light through fog. Somewhere in that mystery lies the heartbeat of the cosmos, not in the ticking of clocks, but in the simple fact that things change, that we change. What built this hallway in the first place? What force carved such precision into the universe, making sure every second follows the last without fail? To understand that, we have to step deeper into the current and ask a harder question. What is time made of? Time isn't something that sits beside us, watching quietly as we move through it. It isn't a backdrop or a stage. It's part of the play itself, a thread woven through every scene, every actor, every whisper of light and gravity. Long ago, people thought time and space were separate. One measured movement, the other gave it room to happen. Then came a moment when that illusion began to unravel, when a man with messy hair and a quiet mind dared to say that space and time are one fabric, stitched together by the weight of the universe. Einstein didn't just rewrite the laws of motion. He changed our sense of what it means to exist. He told us that time bends with gravity, stretches with speed, and dances with space in a choreography older than light. A clock on a mountain runs slightly faster than a clock by the sea. A traveler moving near the speed of light will age slower than the one waiting at home. These are not tricks of the mind, not errors in machinery, but truths of reality itself. When you walk across a field, the ground doesn't move beneath your feet, but in a way, time does. Your body drags its own tiny dent in spacetime, like a marble pressing into soft fabric. The heavier you are, the deeper the dent, the slower time moves inside it. That's gravity, not a mysterious pull, but a bend in the fabric that guides everything toward everything else. Imagine a trampoline stretched tight, smooth, and silent. Drop a heavy ball in the center. The surface curves around it. Then roll a smaller ball nearby. It doesn't move in a straight line. It circles, drawn not by a string, but by the curve itself. That curve is gravity. The surface is space-time. What we call orbits, what we call attraction, are really just things following the shape of the universe's fabric. In this woven tapestry, time isn't a separate thread. It's part of the weave. Every movement through space is also a movement through time. When something changes its speed or falls deeper into gravity's pull, it bends both. Space and time stretch together, lean together, hold each other tightly. You can't tug on one without feeling the other tremble. Think about how this changes everything we thought we knew. Time doesn't tick the same everywhere. It doesn't even pass at a constant rate. To an astronaut floating above Earth, the minutes drift by slightly faster than they do for someone on the ground. To a satellite orbiting farther out, the difference grows wider still. We live in layers of time, all slightly out of sync, yet we never notice because we are part of the same curve. The deeper truth is both beautiful and unsettling. Time is not a river flowing beside the cosmos. It is the cosmos. Every second that passes is the fabric itself shifting shape, stretching here, folding there, responding to the weight of every planet, every atom, every breath. The universe doesn't exist in time. It creates time as it moves. Somewhere in that idea lies a kind of quiet awe. Every heartbeat, every sunrise, every slow rotation of Earth is a reshaping of reality's fabric. When a leaf falls, time curves slightly beneath it. When you lift your hand, the air around your skin bends ever so faintly. The effect is so small, you'll never feel it, but it's there. The universe adjusting itself for you. Once you begin to see it this way, time feels less like something passing and more like something breathing. It expands and contracts with the weight of everything it holds. Around massive stars, it slows to a crawl, as if the universe itself pauses to catch its breath. Near a black hole, it nearly stops, stretching endlessly thin. To the falling particle, time feels normal, steady. To the observer watching from afar, it freezes, trapped in the pull. Two realities, both true, stitched together in one vast, curved design. Einstein used to describe this not with equations, but with pictures. He would say, space-time tells matter how to move, and matter tells space-time how to curve. It's a relationship of balance, a cosmic conversation. You could almost call it love, in a poetic sense. Two things shaping one another forever, neither complete without the other. It's strange to think that the flow of time depends on where you are and how fast you move. A person racing through space at near light speed could experience minutes while centuries pass elsewhere. From their point of view, nothing is wrong, nothing is broken. Time simply bends to keep the story consistent. It's as if the universe adjusts the tempo of its song for every listener, making sure the melody never skips a note, even if the rhythm changes. That's why no two moments are truly identical. The time you're in right now, this very second, exists nowhere else in quite the same way. It's shaped by your position, your motion, your gravity, your choices. You carry your own slice of time with you, a personal rhythm tuned to your existence. When you look at the stars, you're not seeing where they are, but where they were. The light leaving them bent through the fabric of space-time, taking the long road across a universe that's still stretching. Every photon you catch is an ancient traveler, carrying the story of how the cosmos curved and flexed along its way. You are reading time itself, written in light. There's a quiet comfort in knowing that everything, from galaxies spinning millions of light years away to the pulse in your wrist, is connected by the same invisible cloth. Every vibration, every gravitational tug, every breath adds another small wrinkle to the tapestry. Even silence has shape, because space-time itself hums with the faint memory of everything that has ever happened. In that sense, time is not linear at all. It's textured. It flows differently depending on where the universe leans. It ripples, swells, softens. It has tides, just like the ocean. Some parts of reality drift in slow motion, others rush by unseen. Yet through it all, the fabric holds. No tear, no shortcut, no sudden jump, only the patient elasticity of something impossibly vast. It's humbling to realize how small we are inside it, yet how deeply we belong to it. We aren't travelers moving through time, we are patterns woven into it. Our lives are threads in the same cloth that holds stars and dust and dreams. To move, to think, to age is simply to participate in the ongoing act of creation. Every passing moment is the universe reshaping itself, using us as part of its design. So when you look at the night sky, remember that what you're really seeing is the shape of time itself, curved into constellations. When you touch the earth, feel the quiet pull beneath your feet, gravity stretching time by the weight of your being. The whole cosmos is one vast, breathing organism of moments, each second unfolding into the next like petals in eternal bloom. And yet, even though time bends, it never breaks. The fabric stretches, flexes, folds, but never tears. There's something deeply mysterious about that resilience. What gives it such strength? Why does it never snap under the strain of gravity or speed? Perhaps the answer lies in motion itself, the heartbeat of the cosmos, the pulse that keeps time alive. Every motion in the universe is a quiet clock. A leaf falling from a branch, a drop of rain sliding down glass, the slow turning of a moon around its planet. Each movement tells us that time has passed. Without motion, there would be no rhythm, no before or after. Yet it's worth asking whether motion creates time, or if time is what allows motion to exist in the first place. Somewhere in that question lies the heartbeat of reality. When you stand still, it feels as though you've escaped time for a moment. The world pauses, the air hangs heavy, nothing seems to change. But deep beneath that stillness, atoms are trembling, electrons are spinning, light is traveling. There is no perfect stillness, not even in the emptiness between galaxies. The universe is restless. It's always in motion, and through that motion, time keeps score. A planet spinning in the dark doesn't know it's moving. Its oceans rise and fall, its mountains drift apart, but the planet feels no sense of progress. Only we, the watchers, give motion meaning. We measure the rotation, call it a day, count the revolutions, call it a year. We use motion to measure time because time itself cannot be seen. It must be traced by the things that move through it. But what would happen if everything stopped? Imagine a universe frozen in perfect stillness, every particle held in place, every star suspended mid-glow. Would time still pass? Physicists would say yes, but it would have no meaning. Time measures change, and without change, it becomes invisible. It would be like trying to hear a song in a world without sound. The music may exist in theory, but without vibration, without movement, there is nothing to feel. Motion and time are so deeply entangled that separating them feels like trying to pull light apart from brightness. One defines the other. A swing moves through an arc not just in space, but in moments. A heartbeat skips not just through pressure and pulse, but through time itself. Even thought, that quiet flicker in the mind, is a motion, a pattern traveling across the neurons that hold us together. To live is to move, and to move is to exist in time. Perhaps that's why humans are drawn to movement. We walk, we breathe, we dance, we pace when we're anxious, we drift when we're tired. Movement reassures us that time is still flowing, that the world hasn't stopped turning. When everything feels frozen, a moment of grief, a pause in uncertainty, it's motion that brings us back. The rise of a chest, the tremor of a tear, the whisper of wind through trees. Time becomes visible again through those small gestures. Even the smallest shift in the universe, the wobble of an atom, the drift of cosmic dust, ripples outward. Those ripples become waves of change, and change becomes the story of time. The arrow we call past to future might not exist without motion to define it. Without movement, everything would blur into a single eternal moment, neither living nor dead, neither growing nor fading. There's something oddly comforting about knowing that every motion, however tiny, keeps the universe alive. A cloud moving across the moon, a spider weaving its web, a planet tugged by gravity. Each motion is a declaration that time hasn't stopped, that existence continues to unfold. It's the cosmic equivalent of a heartbeat, the soft thrum that proves the universe is still breathing. In a way, motion gives time its melody. Picture a violin string. When it lies still, it's silent, pure potential. The instant it's plucked, vibration turns that potential into sound. Time is much the same. It's the silence before the song, waiting for movement to give it voice. The universe is the bow that draws across the strings, and motion is the music we hear. Stillness is not the absence of time, only a different tempo. To a mayfly, a single afternoon stretches into a lifetime. To a mountain, centuries pass like a breath. Time flows at the speed of perception, adjusted by the rhythm of movement. Fast or slow, it's all the same current, measured differently by each thing that drifts through it. Think about how motion ties every scale of existence together. The Earth spins once every 24 hours, orbiting a star that glides through a galaxy, which itself drifts through expanding space. That motion gives us day and night, seasons, years, history. Yet it's not just the grand movements that matter. Inside your body, blood moves through veins, cells divide, tiny molecular machines turn and twist without pause. You are full of motion, full of time. Without it, even the concept of now would vanish. The mind itself needs motion to think, signals moving, memories firing, awareness shifting from one thought to the next. Consciousness is a kind of motion through the landscape of memory, one that never truly rests. Perhaps that's why time feels faster as we age. The mind moves more slowly through a world that keeps rushing forward. Sometimes it helps to think of time not as a river, but as a pulse. Each motion, each change, each heartbeat is a single beat in the rhythm of the cosmos. Together, they form the song of existence. That's why silence, true silence, feels so strange, because it brushes against the edge of that rhythm, the moment where motion almost stops but never fully does. The quiet between notes makes the melody clearer, but the song only exists because the next note eventually comes. Maybe that's what time really is, not something we feel directly, but what feeling itself depends on. A cosmic metronome ticking beneath everything, keeping balance between what has been and what is still becoming. Without it, there would be no growth, no decay, no meaning to the word change. The universe would be a photograph instead of a film. But life is motion, and motion demands sequence. The story demands time to unfold. When you move your hand through the air, The atoms part around you. The air swirls in tiny eddies. The molecules rearrange. The moment before and the moment after are never the same. That difference, that shift, is time revealing itself. Every action, no matter how simple, writes a new page in the endless book of motion. Even stopping, even standing still, has consequences. Your body burns energy. The planet turns beneath you. Your thoughts slide quietly from one into another. The arrow of time hides inside these motions, guiding them forward. It doesn't need to be seen, only followed. Each movement is both the cause and the result of time's passage, each change a small echo of the universe's first motion, that ancient expansion that began it all. The same rhythm that sent galaxies spinning still vibrates in every step you take. It's hard to say whether time gives rise to motion or motion gives rise to time, but perhaps they're two faces of the same truth. You can't touch one without touching the other. Together, they create the flow we call existence, the unfolding of one moment into the next. So when you watch a leaf drift down or see the slow arc of the moon crossing a quiet sky, you're not just witnessing movement, you're seeing time itself in motion, the universe revealing its pulse through gentle gestures. Each shift, no matter how small, is proof that everything is still alive, still moving, still becoming. But this motion, this endless forward rhythm, carries a mystery. It never reverses. The arrow hidden in motion always points the same way, from before to after, from birth to death, from cause to effect. The world changes, yet never unchanges. The question lingers softly in the air like a note that refuses to fade. If time is so essential, why does it only move forward? Here lies the secret arrow of time: entropy, the quiet force that pulls everything from order to chaos, from neat beginnings to scattered endings. It doesn't roar or strike, it sighs. A slow, inevitable unwinding that has been happening since the very first spark of creation. Every breath of heat, every flicker of light, every crumbling edge of stone carries its trace. Entropy isn't destruction, it's simply the universe letting go. At the dawn of everything, the cosmos was wound tight like a perfect spring, dense, uniform, flawless. No cracks, no wrinkles, no disorder. Just pure potential compressed into a single breathless instant. Then came release, expansion, space stretched, energy spread, and that perfect balance began to dissolve. From that moment on, the universe has been drifting toward greater disorder, like a glass slipping slowly from a table's edge. Not because it wants to fall, but because falling is what comes naturally when everything is left to itself. That tendency, that gentle push toward messiness, is what we call entropy. You can see it in the melting of ice, the cooling of coffee, the fading of memories. When heat moves from a warm hand to a cold cup, it never flows back. The cup doesn't reheat your fingers. That one-way trade, that loss of difference, is time asserting its direction. The arrow that keeps everything moving forward doesn't come from clocks or calendars. It comes from the simple fact that order wants to scatter. Think of a child's room after a day of play. Toys spread across the floor, blankets half folded, crayons left open. The room didn't explode, it just followed the easiest path. To clean it again takes work, energy, attention. That's what separates order from chaos: effort. The universe itself behaves in much the same way. It takes energy to create structure, to build stars from gas, to carve life from dust. But as soon as that energy fades, everything drifts back towards stillness. Entropy isn't evil. It doesn't mean ruin or decay. It's balance. It's what allows things to change, to evolve, to move forward. Without it, everything would stay frozen in that perfect, featureless beginning. There would be no stars, no warmth, no thought. It's strange to think that the very thing that causes decay is also what makes life possible. The universe must fall apart a little for beauty to appear. Every moment that passes, every flick of a second hand, is entropy unfolding. When you light a candle, wax melts, molecules vibrate faster, energy escapes as heat and light. It's a small act of order becoming chaos, yet it gives birth to something lovely, a glow that dances on the wall. That's the secret poetry of entropy. It transforms perfection into experience. Without its gentle push, time itself would have no story to tell. Yet entropy also explains why some things can never be undone. When a cup shatters, you can glue it together, but the cracks remain. The molecules have scattered in ways you can't trace or reverse. When ice melts into water, the atoms are the same, but their arrangement has changed, irreversibly. You can freeze water again, but it will never be the same block of ice. The details of its past are lost to probability, washed away in the flood of countless microscopic possibilities. That's why time refuses to take shortcuts, because doing so would mean reversing entropy, making heat flow from cold to hot, unmelting the ice, unburning the star. The laws of physics don't forbid it outright. In theory, the equations work in both directions. But the odds are so impossibly small that the universe would have to replay itself perfectly, atom by atom, in exact reverse. Every dust mote, every photon, every grain of sand would need to dance backward in flawless harmony. It's not that nature can't do it, it's that it never will. Entropy is the quiet gambler that always wins. It bets on the side of disorder because that side has infinitely more ways to exist. A deck of cards can only be perfectly arranged in one way, but it can be messy in billions of others. So when you shuffle the deck, you don't destroy order, you simply move toward what's most likely. The universe is shuffling itself the same way, moment after moment, spreading energy into more and more possible states. You can feel entropy in the way time wears things down. Metal rusts, paint fades, stars run out of fuel. Even memories, once bright, soften at the edges. The details blur, the emotions lose their sharpness. It's not just forgetting, it's entropy in the mind. The pathways of neurons shift, weaken, rearrange. Yet in that fading, something tender happens. What remains is often the feeling, the essence, the warmth that lingers after the details are gone. Perhaps that's entropy's strange kindness. It erases, but gently. In the vast scale of the cosmos, entropy drives everything. Stars burn their fuel, spreading heat into space. Their light fades into the cold dark between galaxies. Even black holes, those monuments of gravity, slowly leak energy through a faint whisper called Hawking radiation. In the end, everything levels out. Every temperature equalizes. Every gradient flattens. The universe grows quiet. Some physicists call this the heat death. Not a violent end, but a slow hush, like a candle dimming until only smoke remains. It sounds tragic, but maybe it isn't. Entropy isn't the enemy of creation. It's its partner. Because while one part of the universe unwinds, another part uses that release to build something new. A dying star scatters its elements into space, seeding clouds that form new suns, new worlds, new beginnings. Life, too, feeds on entropy, turning gradients of energy into the delicate machinery of thought and growth. Even decay has purpose. Even endings give birth to more time. From the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, everything is dancing to entropy's rhythm. It's a waltz of order and disorder, of building and breaking, of creating and dissolving. Time doesn't just move forward because of entropy. Time is made visible by it. Each moment is a record of change, of energy spreading, of structure giving way to freedom. The arrow of time isn't drawn by clocks or by motion, but by this gentle flow toward equilibrium. What's remarkable is that we live in the middle of this process. We are temporary pockets of order, fragile islands standing briefly against the tide. Our bodies fight entropy with every heartbeat, using energy to stay warm, to repair, to think. But eventually, the tide wins, as it always does. That isn't something to mourn, it's the reason we exist at all. Without entropy, there would be no tide to swim in, no current to carry us from birth to death, from silence to song. So when you look around, at melting ice, at the setting sun, at your own reflection, you're seeing entropy at work. It's not a villain, not a thief of time, but the storyteller behind every transformation. It gives the world texture, motion, and depth. It reminds us that every ending is a continuation of something else, that every scattering of pieces is just the start of another pattern forming. Entropy is the pulse beneath time's arrow, the one-way ticket from what was to what will be. Yet even as it leads everything forward, there are whispers in physics, tiny, improbable corners of reality, where time seems to forget its direction, where the arrow might waver or even pause. Those moments, rare and fragile, are where the mystery deepens, where time itself seems to hesitate before taking its next step. At the tiniest scales, where particles hum softly in the dark and reality trembles like a thin thread of light, time loses its grip. The rules that seem so absolute to us, the ticking of clocks, the fading of moments, start to loosen, as if they were never laws at all, but habits the universe picked up over time. Down there, beneath everything we can see or touch, time isn't strict. It bends, shrinks, sometimes even turns back on itself, quiet as a breath drawn in before the next exhale. In the quantum world, where particles flicker between existence and possibility, the equations that describe their behavior don't choose sides. They don't say forward or backward. They simply describe change. Change that could just as easily run in reverse as it does toward what we call the future. To an electron, the direction of time is irrelevant. It follows whatever path requires the least effort, like a raindrop gliding down glass. It doesn't know where before ends or where after begins. Those are words we've invented to make sense of motion that was never meant to be linear. It's unsettling, this idea that the universe itself might not know what forward means. We've built our entire sense of life around that arrow: birth, growth, aging, decay. But at the smallest level, that arrow dissolves. A photon, for instance, doesn't experience time at all. To it, crossing a galaxy takes no time whatsoever. The beginning and the end of its journey are one and the same. In the photon's world, there is no before and after, only the whole stretch of its existence collapsed into a single instant. That kind of symmetry is woven deep into the mathematics of nature. Almost every fundamental equation, the ones that describe how particles move, how forces act, how energy flows, works perfectly well in reverse. The movie of the universe could play backward, and the physics would remain unchanged. That means that on paper, nothing forbids a shattered glass from reassembling itself, or a burnt-out star from rekindling its flame. The math doesn't object. The only thing that stops it is probability, the same quiet bias we call entropy. So maybe what we experience as the arrow of time isn't a rule of nature at all. Maybe it's a kind of illusion that only emerges when enough particles begin to agree on a direction. Imagine countless grains of sand sliding down a slope. Each grain follows its own path, some bouncing forward, others rolling sideways, some even briefly sliding back. But from a distance, all those grains together form a single unified flow. Time, perhaps, works the same way. Every particle moves according to local rules that don't prefer past or future, but collectively, they create a grand direction, the sense of forwardness that defines our reality. It's strange to think that time's arrow might not exist inherently in the universe, but is instead born from the behavior of many things acting together. Like the way temperature isn't a property of a single atom, but of countless atoms moving in concert. One particle can't be hot or cold, only many can. In that same sense, one electron alone doesn't experience the flow of time. Only vast collections of matter, tangled in countless interactions, begin to produce what we call now. Time, then, could be a large-scale illusion, something that becomes visible only when the universe grows complex enough to need it. That thought bends the mind in a quiet, beautiful way, because it means that what we feel as the unstoppable passage of time, our aging, our memories, the growing distance between what was and what is, might just be the byproduct of collective motion, not a cosmic law. The ticking of the universe's clock may not come from some deep rhythm hidden in spacetime, but from the way countless tiny events settle into patterns that give rise to direction. The feeling of time may be something that the universe itself learned to have. Quantum mechanics is full of hints that support this view. Some experiments show particles appearing to influence each other across time, as though the future and the past were gently whispering to each other, keeping secrets from the present. In certain equations, causes and effects can swap places without breaking any rules. In others, time can loop or branch, allowing for possibilities where an event and its consequence coexist. To human senses, that's absurd, but to the quantum world, it's normal. Time doesn't march, it dances, steps forward and back, sometimes in perfect symmetry. At that scale, everything happens in probabilities, not certainties. A particle doesn't simply exist here or there. It exists in many places at once, each possibility humming in superposition. Only when we observe it, when we interact, does one version become real, freezing a slice of the universe into what we call a moment. Perhaps our act of observing is what breaks the symmetry, collapsing timeless potential into linear experience. Each glance, each thought, might be a gentle tug that forces time to pick a direction. It's like standing before a mirror that reflects both the future and the past, unable to tell which image came first. In one reflection, you see the past unfolding into now. In the other, now unfolding into what has yet to be. The mirror itself doesn't care which way light travels. Only we do, because we live on one side of it, caught inside the arrow that entropy built. But behind that mirror, where particles live and light moves without resistance, time might be perfectly balanced, forward and backward existing together, indistinguishable. This symmetry gives the universe its elegance. It's what allows physics to describe so much with so little. Yet it also hides a paradox. If time truly has no preference at the smallest scale, then why do we, large conscious beings, experience it so rigidly? Why does everything in our world move from cause to effect, never the other way around? The answer might be that we exist within the illusion, not outside it. We are made of patterns that depend on entropy's direction. Our memories form only when energy flows one way. Our thoughts unfold only when order gives way to disorder. We are creatures of the arrow, even if the universe itself doesn't have one. Take a moment to think about that. The idea that time as you feel it now may not be fundamental. The seconds that seem to slide by, the past that seems forever sealed, might be something your brain constructs to make sense of an ocean of motion too vast to comprehend. Consciousness could be a way of organizing chaos into a coherent stream, of arranging flickering quantum possibilities into the story of a life. Maybe time feels real because stories need order, and we are storytelling creatures living inside the greatest narrative of all, the illusion of continuity. When physicists run their equations backward, the results are as valid as when they run them forward. The symmetry is perfect, but when they step outside their math and look up at the night sky, they see something very different. Galaxies drifting apart, stars dying, radiation cooling. The universe clearly moves towards something, not away. Somewhere between those equations and the starlight, time seems to make a choice. It's in that gap, between the reversible rules of the quantum world and the irreversible flow of the macroscopic, that our sense of reality is born. So perhaps the arrow of time isn't a true arrow at all, but a vast illusion that emerges only when countless tiny arrows point roughly in the same direction. Like a murmuration of starlings swirling in the dusk, individual birds move unpredictably, yet from afar, the flock forms a pattern, graceful and deliberate. Time, too, might be such a flock, a collective rhythm rising from chaos, painting the sky of our perception with meaning. The deeper we look, the more the boundaries blur. Time, space, matter, motion, all seem to be woven from the same shimmering fabric, shifting depending on perspective. To the quantum world, there is no before or after. To us, there is only one way forward. But maybe both are true, depending on where we stand. If that's the case, then time as we know it might not be a built-in feature of the universe at all, but something that emerges, delicate, temporary, and astonishing, from the interplay of countless invisible symmetries breaking softly all around us. What if time doesn't flow at all? What if everything simply is? The question sounds almost absurd at first, as if it denies everything we've ever felt or known. Yet the deeper one listens, the more it begins to hum with possibility. Because maybe, beneath the illusion of movement and passing and change, reality isn't moving anywhere. It's already there, complete, silent, whole. Time may not be a river carrying us along its current, but an ocean, still vast and eternal, in which every ripple, every wave, every drop already exists all at once. We are the ones drifting, not time. Some physicists call this vision of reality the block universe. It suggests that past, present, and future are not separate, but coexist as a single timeless structure. Everything that has ever happened, everything that ever will, already is, arranged like pages in an infinite book. We don't see the whole story at once because consciousness, our small window through which existence peaks, moves through the pages one at a time. To us, the turning feels like motion. The transition from one page to another feels like time flowing. But the book itself never moves. It simply is. Think of standing in a library that holds every moment of your life. Shelves stretch endlessly in all directions, filled with volumes that contain every heartbeat, every breath, every fleeting thought you've ever had. Somewhere on one shelf, there's a book titled The Day You Were Born, still open to its first page. On another, The Moment You're Living Now. And farther along, the final page of your story. You could, in principle, open any of them, see yourself at any point, frozen yet alive within that single slice of eternity. The words on each page are already written, yet you, as the reader, experience them line by line, word by word, unfolding in what feels like motion. It's a haunting thought, but also oddly comforting. Because if the block universe is real, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every smile, every goodbye, every shimmering second you thought had vanished into memory still exists, preserved somewhere in the fabric of spacetime, like fossils of light. The child you once were is not gone, only hidden on a different page. The moments you long for still hum quietly in the background, as real as the one you're breathing in now. The flow of time might then be nothing more than perception, the mind's way of organizing a vast, unchanging landscape. When we say time passes, what we might mean is that our awareness moves. We slide through the structure of reality, frame by frame, like a flashlight moving across a mural. The painting doesn't move, but our light does, revealing each piece in sequence. That's why the past feels gone, the future unknown, not because they don't exist, but because our gaze hasn't reached them yet. In this picture, cause and effect are simply relationships between different parts of the block. Every cause already contains its effect, just as every seed contains the shape of the tree it will become. Nothing truly happens, because everything that can happen already is, woven into the fabric of the whole. The Big Bang isn't an explosion in time. It's a region of the block, sitting quietly beside the one we call now. The heat death of the universe, too, already exists, shimmering faintly in another region. All moments coexist, layered and eternal. For some, this view feels suffocating. The idea that the story is already written, that free will might be nothing more than the illusion of turning pages that were destined to turn. But perhaps that isn't quite right, because even in a written story, the reader's experience is real. Each time the story is read, it is lived. The feelings, the choices, the discoveries, they exist within the reading, within the act of moving through what already is. The fact that the ending is written doesn't make the journey less meaningful. It makes it precious. Our sense of now, that fleeting, fragile instant where reality feels most alive, might be the mind's way of stitching together two nearby pages in the block, creating the illusion of flow. The present could be the knife edge where consciousness meets the eternal, slicing through the stillness to give rise to the sensation of motion. It's like watching frames of film flicker fast enough that the mind no longer sees the gaps, only a seamless, living image. The movie isn't moving. The reel already contains the entire story. But we experience it as a continuous dance because of the rhythm of our perception. There's something dreamlike about this idea. The thought that maybe you've never actually moved through time at all, but instead, your consciousness is simply wandering across a landscape where every version of you already stands. You, laughing as a child. You, sitting in this moment. You, somewhere far ahead, older, quieter, looking back. All of them existing simultaneously, each unaware of the others, like distant stars shining from different corners of the same sky. If the block universe is true, then death might not be an ending either. It could simply be another region of the structure, another chapter in the vast geometry of being. The moments after your final breath are already there, just as the moments before your first were. From within the story, you can't step beyond the page you're reading. But from outside, from the timeless perspective of the universe itself, all pages coexist, equally real, equally alive. That's why some physicists and philosophers describe the universe not as a process, but as a pattern, a frozen tapestry of cause and effect, where motion, growth, and decay are illusions of perspective. To us, it feels like we're walking a path, but to the cosmos, there is no walking, no direction, no time, only structure, only being. Take a slow breath and think about this. Every sensation you've ever had, every heartbeat that ever will come, already exists in that structure. You are not moving toward your future. Your consciousness is simply unfolding within it, like a flower blooming across different layers of reality. The petals aren't growing forward. They're revealing themselves, one by one, in the order your mind can comprehend. Yet, even knowing this, the mystery doesn't fade. Because if everything already exists, why do we still feel suspense? Why do surprises still startle us, joy still catch us off guard, sadness still come uninvited? Why does the story feel like it's being written in real time when, by all accounts, it's already printed on the cosmic page? Perhaps that's because awareness isn't part of the block, it's the light that moves through it. Consciousness might be the only true motion, the single spark that gives meaning to an otherwise static universe. The block may hold every moment, but awareness experiences them one by one. That's what makes the story feel alive, not because it's changing, but because we are. In a sense, we are the flow of time itself, tracing the shape of eternity through perception. So maybe time doesn't move, and maybe the universe doesn't flow. Maybe everything simply is, waiting quietly for us to notice it. Yet the question remains, soft and persistent, like a page half turned in a dark room. If the book of the universe is already written, why does the story still surprise us? Maybe time depends not on the universe, but on us. The thought sits quietly at first, subtle, like a whisper carried across the back of your mind. Yet it grows heavier the more you think about it. Because if reality itself only comes into focus when we look at it, perhaps time, too, exists only because we're here to notice its passing. The ticking of seconds, the rhythm of moments, might not belong to the cosmos at all, but to the mind that watches it. Quantum mechanics has long carried this strange, almost magical suggestion that things don't truly exist in one definite state until they are observed. A particle can be here and there, doing everything and nothing, until a conscious observer steps in to measure it. It's as if the universe is waiting for someone to pay attention before deciding what it wants to be. The act of looking seems to cast a kind of spell, pulling potential into presence. Maybe the same spell shapes time itself. Inside the human mind, time is not a fixed stream but a handmade illusion. Our brains stitch moments together, one after another, weaving the raw chaos of sensation into a story we can live inside. When light strikes our eyes or sound reaches our ears, the brain doesn't receive them in order. It collects them all, like scattered notes, and arranges them into a melody that feels coherent. The rhythm of that melody is what we call time. Neuroscientists have found that the brain doesn't even process events as they happen. It waits for a few hundred milliseconds before deciding what now really means. It takes all the incoming signals, reorders them slightly, and then presents a smooth illusion of continuity. So the present we feel isn't truly the present, it's already in the past, neatly edited for flow. The world doesn't move smoothly. Our minds make it seem that way. It's as though consciousness is a film editor sitting in a dark room, trimming, splicing, adjusting. Every sensation is a frame, every heartbeat a flicker of light, every thought a cut from one scene to the next. The editor's hands work invisibly, erasing the jumps, hiding the noise, building a seamless reel. By the time the final version reaches our awareness, we're watching a story so cleanly constructed, we forget it's been edited at all. That's why time can stretch and bend so strangely inside us. A minute of waiting in fear can feel endless, while an hour spent laughing can vanish in a blink. When we recall a childhood memory, we don't just remember, we return. The mind rebuilds the moment from scattered fragments, then lives inside it again. To consciousness, time isn't distance. It's texture, emotion, attention. Every creature experiences it differently. A fly, with its rapid flicker of perception, might see the world as a slow-motion film. A whale, whose heart beats once every few seconds, might experience time like a deep, rolling tide. The passage of time isn't universal, it's personal, sculpted by the rhythm of each mind that perceives it. Our memories play a quiet trick here. They give shape to time's direction, tying past to present in a fragile chain. Without them, the sequence unravels. The flow stops. Think of waking from a dream with no sense of how long you've slept, or stepping under anesthesia where the gap between closing your eyes and waking up again feels like a breath. In those moments, time isn't gone. It's simply unmeasured, unobserved, unmade. The act of remembering itself might be what creates the illusion of a continuous past. Each time we recall a moment, we rewrite it slightly, layer new details over the old. The brain doesn't replay the past like a recording. It reconstructs it like an artist restoring a fading painting, brushstroke by brushstroke. Over years, that painting changes, yet we call it the same memory. Perhaps what we think of as the arrow of time is nothing more than the slow evolution of those paintings in our minds, each one drifting a little farther from the first sketch. In dreams, this illusion becomes even clearer. There, time loses its grip entirely. A lifetime can pass between two blinks, or a single instant can stretch into eternity. The mind is freed from the need to anchor itself to clocks or cause and effect. It builds worlds from fragments, shuffles sequences, folds moments inside each other. Yet inside the dream, it all feels seamless, coherent, alive. Waking up, we realize that the flow we trusted was nothing but imagination. But how different is that, really, from waking life? Perhaps consciousness itself is the metronome that measures time into being. When awareness dims, during deep sleep, under anesthesia in meditation, the rhythm falters. The mind releases its grip and time slips away, like sand falling through open fingers. The seconds don't stop existing, but without someone to count them, they lose their meaning. Time without awareness is like music without a listener, technically present, but hollow, voiceless. This idea doesn't mean the universe bends to our will, only that its meaning depends on perception. The physical world may tick forward according to its laws, but the experience of time, the way it breathes, slows, speeds, hurts, heals, belongs to consciousness alone. It's the brain's way of creating order from a storm of signals. It's strange to think that what feels most fundamental, the steady pulse of seconds, could be so fragile. Yet our experience of time can fracture so easily. A concussion, a seizure, a moment of shock, any of them can shatter the illusion. Victims of trauma often describe time as freezing, looping, collapsing into stillness. Their minds stop moving through the narrative, trapped on one unbearable page. When the observer's spell falters, time itself loses coherence. There's something hauntingly beautiful in that fragility. Because it means time isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we make, moment by moment, thought by thought. Every second that feels long or short, joyful or endless, is crafted from within. The ticking of the clock isn't time moving forward. It's the sound of our consciousness keeping rhythm with the world outside. From this perspective, we might say that time exists only where awareness does. The vast stretches of the universe, cold and silent, could be timeless until a mind looks upon them. A galaxy swirling in darkness for billions of years might not experience its own motion. It simply exists, frozen in the stillness of unobserved reality. But the moment a conscious being sees it, names it, remembers it, time is born in that instant, blooming from the act of observation. Maybe that's the spell consciousness casts, the power to give the universe a sense of before and after, to turn chaos into story. In that sense, each of us isn't just living inside time. We are its architects, its witnesses, its keepers. Every heartbeat writes a line, every glance edits a frame, every breath keeps the illusion alive. Yet this spell, delicate as it is, depends entirely on the observer remaining awake. So what happens when the observer fades? When the mind goes silent? When awareness dissolves back into the dark from which it came? Does time end with us? Does the universe fall still again, waiting for another consciousness to open its eyes and start the spell anew? In deep sleep, time disappears. In death, perhaps it never returns. There's a quiet kind of truth in that thought, unsettling, yet serene. When consciousness loosens its grip, the steady hum of seconds seems to fade into silence. The world does not stop, but our awareness of it dissolves, like ink sinking into still water. Every night, as we drift away, the passage of time unravels. The mind releases its careful bookkeeping, and for a while, the universe forgets to count. Think of the moments before sleep truly takes hold. The edges of thought begin to blur, sounds soften into background, and your sense of now starts slipping away. There's no beginning to that process, no single instant when you cross from wakefulness into dreaming. One moment you are here, tracing a thought, and the next, you are somewhere else entirely, outside of sequence, outside of time. In that space, minutes lose their meaning. Dreams unfold with their own strange rhythm, untethered from clocks. You might live an entire lifetime before the alarm rings again. Then morning comes and you wake. The sun has moved, the clock insists that hours have passed, yet your mind can't account for them. To consciousness, those missing hours never existed. They weren't experienced, so they weren't truly real. You left one moment and reappeared in another, as though you had skipped across time like a stone across water. But nothing was skipped. The river still flowed. You just weren't there to feel it. This nightly disappearance reveals something profound. Time only feels continuous while the observer remains. The brain, which keeps the rhythm of waking life, falls silent, and with it, the illusion collapses. The machinery that measures duration, the delicate synchronization between perception and reality, pauses its work. When it resumes, it stitches the gap together with a simple assumption: time must have passed. Yet in the private space of the mind, there is only a seamless jump from one awareness to the next. Some philosophers call this a rehearsal for eternity. For what is eternity, if not the complete absence of timekeeping? A state beyond before and after, where no thought rises to mark a change. Death might not be an endless darkness stretching forward. It might be no stretch at all. Just the final moment of awareness, held perfectly still, without edges or duration. A forever that feels like a single breath. There's something both terrifying and peaceful in that possibility. Terrifying because our sense of self clings so tightly to the movement of time. We define ourselves by what came before and what might come next. Our memories, our plans, our hopes, all are threads spun from time's forward pull. To lose that motion feels like losing existence itself, but peaceful too, because without the burden of before and after, there can be no loss, no waiting, no fear. In timelessness, everything simply is. During certain moments in life, deep meditation, shock, or profound awe, we catch glimpses of that stillness while still awake. A mountain peak at dawn, a lover's gaze, a near-death accident, experiences that silence the mind so completely that time seems to dissolve. Seconds stretch until they vanish. The world feels both infinite and impossibly close. In those instants, it's as though consciousness steps outside the flow, peeking at what existence looks like when stripped of motion. Perhaps that is what death is, not the end of being, but the end of the need to measure it. Sleep gives us a softer version of that surrender. Every night, we let go of control, sink into the dark, and trust that we'll return. The body keeps breathing, the heart keeps beating, but the storyteller inside our heads goes quiet. The dream world takes over. A strange echo of consciousness, replaying fragments of memory in wild combinations. It's a rehearsal for the great forgetting, a reminder that awareness can pause without erasing what it once was. When someone dies, we often say their time has ended. Yet, from within that person's last flicker of awareness, time might not end. It might simply stop meaning anything. There may be no final moment to experience, no after to notice, just a gentle fading, like a candle's flame surrendering to the dark. From the outside, the clocks keep ticking, indifferent. But inside that stillness, there's no difference between a second and a century. Both are nothing. Both are peace. Scientists studying sleep describe it as a state where the brain disconnects from temporal cues. The body cycles through rhythms, but the mind drifts freely, unanchored from duration. The brainstem controls breathing. The heart obeys its electrical beat, yet the sense of now evaporates. We are sustained by time's machinery, but no longer aware of it. The self dissolves into pure function. In that sense, every night we vanish from the universe's timeline and return at dawn. The continuity we feel is an illusion patched together each morning, the brain's gentle lie that we've been here all along. Yet the truth is more poetic. We die a little, every night, and are born again with every sunrise. There's an ancient calm in that cycle, a quiet reminder that even time's disappearance is natural. It's not something to fear. The universe itself may rest in a similar rhythm, expansion and contraction, existence and quiet, light and dark. When a star collapses into a black hole, its matter doesn't vanish, it falls beyond time's reach. Inside that event horizon, time slows, bends, stops. The star no longer experiences change. It has entered the stillness we only glimpse in dreams. Perhaps consciousness does something similar when it fades. It doesn't cease. It slips beyond the boundary where seconds matter. For the living, that looks like an ending. For the one experiencing it, there may be no sense of ending at all, just a soft surrender into timelessness. It raises an odd question. When we say someone is gone, who is keeping time for that to be true? The clocks on our walls continue, our calendars turn, our memories stretch backward and forward. But for the one who's left, those measurements no longer exist. Death, then, could be less about leaving time and more about returning to what existed before time began, the still, uncounted quiet from which all things first emerged. There is something almost merciful in the idea that eternity might feel like nothing at all. The fear of endlessness, of an infinite stretch of awareness, fades when you realize that without consciousness, there's no one left to measure forever. The same way we don't suffer through the hours we sleep, we might not endure eternity. We simply stop counting. Every night, the mind practices that art of letting go. It learns to release its grip on the ticking of clocks, to surrender its constant need for sequence. Perhaps this is why sleep feels so healing. It's not just rest for the body, but rehearsal for the soul. A reminder that stillness is not emptiness, but a kind of quiet fullness where everything stops needing to happen. When we return from that stillness, when morning light filters through the window, something subtle happens. Time restarts, or rather, our awareness of it does. The seconds gather themselves, line up, and march forward once again. The world wakes, the story resumes, the observer takes their place in the flow. We don't question it. We simply step back into motion, as though nothing had paused. But somewhere deep in the mind, perhaps a part of us remembers that for a while, the river stopped. That it will stop again. That stillness isn't the opposite of time, but its quiet foundation, the blank canvas upon which every heartbeat, every sunrise, every lifetime is painted. Yet even as we sleep, even as we die, the universe keeps its rhythm. The stars still burn, the atoms still vibrate, the galaxies still drift. Outside our private silence, clocks keep ticking, loyal to the flow we no longer feel. What keeps them moving forward when awareness fades? What invisible hand wins their gears when all else is still? Gravity doesn't just hold us down, it slows us down. Every breath, every step, every thought you've ever had unfolds inside a quiet tug that shapes not only where you are, but when you are. It's a strange truth that the same invisible hand that keeps our feet pressed to the earth also decides how quickly our moments pass. Gravity, that ancient sculptor of stars and orbits, bends more than just space. It bends the very rhythm of existence. Imagine standing on a mountaintop, feeling the thin air brushing against your skin. Below you, in the valley, people live their lives unaware that their seconds are moving just a little bit slower than yours. It's imperceptible, almost poetic, a reminder that time itself breathes differently depending on where it rests. Einstein revealed this subtle secret, showing us that time and gravity are inseparable partners in the cosmic dance. The stronger the gravity, the thicker the fabric of time becomes, as though the universe itself resists the rush. Now travel further to where gravity grows monstrous, near a black hole. Out there, time becomes syrup. The closer you move toward the dark heart of that abyss, the slower your seconds stretch. From your perspective, everything feels normal. Your heart beats, your pulse steady, your mind alert. But for an observer watching from a safe distance, you appear frozen, suspended just above the edge of nothing. They would see your fall slow and slow until it nearly stops, your last heartbeat stretched across centuries. To them, you would never quite disappear. That's the strange patience of gravity. It doesn't stop you, it just slows your story to almost nothing. The universe seems to savor every moment near that edge, refusing to let it pass too quickly. It's as though time itself hesitates, caught between being and unbeing, unable to decide whether to continue or to pause forever. The realization unsettles something deep inside. We like to think of time as steady, impartial, universal, ticking equally for all. But the truth is far more delicate. Time is personal. It bends for you differently than it does for me, depending on the invisible weight pulling on each of us. Two clocks placed at different heights, even just a few meters apart, will slowly drift out of sync. One will age faster, one slower, though both tick in perfect rhythm to their own experience. It's such a small difference that it feels almost poetic instead of scientific. Yet across cosmic scales, that difference becomes profound. For an astronaut orbiting close to a black hole, a single hour could equal thousands of years on Earth. A lover waiting at home would live a lifetime before their partner returns, unchanged, untouched by the centuries that have passed. That's not science fiction. It's the universe quietly revealing that time, like light, can stretch and warp, but never break. There's a kind of humility in that. Gravity reminds us that time isn't a rigid ruler drawn across the cosmos, but a soft current shaped by mass, motion, and perspective. The closer something lies to a great weight, the deeper it sinks into that current. time thickens, resists, flows reluctantly. The farther you move from gravity's embrace, the more freely it runs, light and quick. Even now, your head is aging a fraction faster than your feet. The effect is tiny but real, a gentle whisper that the laws of the universe are always at play, even in the stillness of ordinary life. Think of how this changes our understanding of the cosmos. A massive star, dying in its final collapse, doesn't just distort the space around it, it distorts the timeline itself. To those far away, its death unfolds in slow motion, a performance stretched across eons. Yet for the star, the end comes swiftly, a single, inevitable breath. Reality fractures into perspectives. Time ceases to be a shared experience and becomes a matter of where you stand in the gravity well. Even here on Earth, gravity's patience governs our sense of permanence. The mountains erode, the oceans shift, continents drift inch by inch, all under time's slow pulse, measured differently in the depths of the sea than in the open air. Everything ages according to where it rests in the curve of the planet's pull. The stone at your feet has lived a slower life than the clouds drifting overhead. The more we learn about gravity, the more it feels like the universe's gentle way of keeping time honest. It doesn't rush. It doesn't cheat. It molds each moment with care, making sure nothing escapes the laws of cause and consequence. Even light, the fastest traveler we know, bows slightly to gravity's will, bending its path through warped time. To defy that curve would mean defying the very shape of reality itself. The idea that time slows near massive bodies carries a quiet beauty. It suggests that the universe is not chaotic, but deeply patient. It allows everything to unfold at its own pace. Stars live longer where gravity is soft, shorter where it's fierce. The pulse of galaxies, the ticking of atoms, the aging of faces, all choreographed by that same invisible thread. Perhaps that's why we find black holes so mesmerizing. They are not just places of destruction, but of ultimate stillness. They show us what happens when time itself is stretched to its limit. Inside that event horizon, gravity's pull becomes absolute. No signal escapes, no heartbeat is measured. To cross that line is to fall into timelessness, to enter a realm where before and after lose all distinction. Yet from the outside, the universe never witnesses that final step. It only sees the endless approach, the eternal slowing, as though the fall never completes. This paradox feels almost spiritual. The black hole, that abyss of gravity, becomes a mirror reflecting the mystery of time itself, how it can flow, bend, freeze, yet never vanish. It challenges the idea of endings. Perhaps nothing ever truly ends. It simply falls beyond our perception, into a place where time grows infinitely slow, so slow that it might as well stop. In a strange way, gravity grants immortality, not by preserving life, but by suspending it in the endless stretch of its own patience. A moment near the event horizon, from another perspective, could last forever. Time itself seems to resist letting go, holding that instant close, refusing to let it fade. It's as if the universe treasures certain moments too much to let them pass completely. This brings a quiet comfort. Even in our daily lives, gravity's soft pull ensures that nothing ever happens too fast. It grounds us, slows us, gives our fleeting seconds a weight, a texture. Without it, everything would rush, all events collapsing into each other, no distinction between then and now. Gravity doesn't just keep us from floating away, it anchors time itself, giving existence its pace. In this sense, gravity is not the enemy of freedom, but the guardian of rhythm. It ensures that even in a universe full of motion and chaos, there is order, patience, continuity. Every orbit, every fall, every steady heartbeat under its influence becomes part of a cosmic symphony that refuses haste. The melody of existence would fall apart without gravity's tempo keeping time. Yet, no matter how slow time becomes, it never stops entirely. Not until the very edge, the event horizon, where time flattens into something unrecognizable. There, physics falters, language collapses, and our imagination trembles. Because at that edge lies the ultimate paradox, a place where time may no longer move at all, where the ticking of every clock, every atom, every heartbeat might fall silent, not for a moment, but forever. At the edge of a black hole, time forgets how to move. To the distant observer, it slows, trembles, and finally freezes. Matter approaching the event horizon seems to hang there forever, stretched thinner and thinner by gravity's silent grip. The fall never completes. From afar, the traveler becomes a ghost of light, dimming endlessly but never vanishing. Yet, from the traveler's own view, time flows naturally. The heartbeat continues. The seconds pass as they always have. The horizon rushes closer, not as eternity, but as an instant. Two versions of reality, both true, both irreconcilable. This is the frozen moment, one of the strangest illusions in nature, born not from trickery, but from the very shape of space-time. Gravity distorts time's rhythm so deeply that what looks frozen to one observer feels perfectly normal to another. There's no single truth, only perspectives bound by the limits of light. You and I might watch a spaceship falling toward a black hole and swear that it has stopped, yet inside that ship, the crew sees no stillness. They fall freely, smoothly, unaware that in the eyes of the cosmos, they've already become eternal statues. It's difficult to grasp this duality because our minds crave one version of reality. Either time moves or it doesn't. Yet near the event horizon, the universe allows both to exist side by side. The laws of physics do not break. They merely stretch beyond comfort. The closer you get to infinity, the slower your clock ticks. But slower has no meaning when compared to something that has already stopped. From within the fall, you would never know. From outside, you would never see the end. Light itself suffers this fate. Photons climbing out of the black hole's gravity well lose energy, their color stretching redder and redder until they fade into invisibility. It's as if the universe whispers them away, one wavelength at a time, erasing their voice from existence. Matter behaves the same. The atoms of whatever falls in are pulled apart, smeared across time's surface, until the very notion of moment begins to blur. The black hole doesn't simply devour matter. It devours the story of matter, flattening it across the frozen boundary. Yet, from the traveler's own frame of reference, there is no freeze, no distortion. They cross the horizon in a blink, feeling no boundary at all. To them, it's just another step in the journey, one moment leading into the next. The passage of time feels consistent, unbroken. That's what makes the frozen moment so haunting. It isn't a trick, but a coexistence of truths. The same event can be eternal and instantaneous depending on where you stand. This contradiction is more than a curiosity. It reveals something profound about the nature of time itself. Time is not a universal flow washing over everything equally. It's stitched together by perspective, shaped by gravity, bent by speed. What we call now is not the same everywhere, not even for two people separated by a few light years. The cosmos doesn't keep a single clock. It allows each observer their own private rhythm, their own tempo of existence. In that sense, the event horizon becomes a mirror, showing us how fragile our assumptions about time truly are. We think of it as a steady river, the same for all who float upon it. But at the edge of a black hole, that illusion shatters. The river divides, curling into stillness for one traveler, roaring forward for another. Neither is wrong. Both are real. The universe is vast enough to hold both versions of truth without choosing between them. The frozen moment also reveals an almost spiritual symmetry. To the outside world, the falling object is immortal. It never quite reaches the horizon, forever suspended at the threshold of oblivion. To itself, the fall is brief, inevitable, finite. From one view, eternal life. From another, instantaneous death. Perhaps that's the universe's quiet way of reconciling opposites, by letting eternity and finality exist in the same breath. There's a haunting beauty in that idea. The frozen moment suggests that maybe nothing ever truly ends from the outside perspective. Every fall, every collapse, every dying star remains visible somewhere, stretched across the fabric of time, fading but never gone. The light may dim beyond recognition, yet mathematically, the image never quite disappears. The universe remembers everything that crosses the threshold, even as it continues to move forward. It's tempting to see this as a metaphor for memory itself. Inside the mind, moments are stored long after they've passed, suspended in the amber of consciousness. They no longer live, yet they don't vanish either. They exist in a strange limbo, accessible but unreachable, frozen yet alive in recollection. The black hole does the same for reality. It holds on to the information, spreading it thin across its surface, preserving it in ways we can barely comprehend. The duality of the frozen moment also forces us to question the direction of time. For the falling traveler, time's arrow continues straight toward the singularity. For the outside observer, That arrow seems to bend, slow, and flatten until it points nowhere at all. What does it mean for time to stop from one view while remaining alive from another? Perhaps the truth is that time doesn't stop. It simply becomes unobservable. Beyond the event horizon, our instruments fail, our light cannot return, our stories end. But the silence there may not be an absence. It could be a different kind of continuation, one hidden from the eyes of those who remain. There's something deeply human about our fascination with that horizon. It reflects our own fear of endings, our desire to know what lies beyond the boundaries of perception. The frozen moment feels like death viewed from both sides, eternal stillness for those left behind, but seamless transition for the one crossing over. To watch something vanish into that quiet gravity is to glimpse what it might mean to leave time behind, not as destruction, but as transformation. Einstein once said that for those who understand relativity, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. The frozen moment makes that idea tangible. At the event horizon, those illusions collapse entirely. The travelers now and the observers forever coexist in the same equation. The universe, it seems, is not bound by a single narrative. It allows each witness their own version of time's story. In that way, the black hole isn't a hole at all, but a boundary of understanding. A place where our language stops making sense, where before and after lose their meaning. Beyond it, physics might continue, but our minds cannot follow. The frozen moment marks the edge of human comprehension, the point where our clocks stop ticking, not because time ends, but because our ability to measure it does. There's a calm that comes with accepting that. To realize that time doesn't truly stop. It just escapes our sight, is to glimpse the humility of existence. The universe doesn't owe us clarity. It reveals just enough to make us wonder, then hides the rest in perfect darkness. The frozen moment, then, becomes less of a paradox and more of a promise, that there are places where time still moves, even if no one is left to feel it. So we stand outside the black hole, watching light fade into red, watching motion slow into stillness, knowing that from another frame of reference, the story continues unseen. Somewhere, beyond that invisible curtain, time may flow again. But whether it turns forward, backward, or into something entirely new, we cannot say. The question lingers, stretching across the silence like the faint echo of a heartbeat. What lies beyond that horizon? Could time ever turn back? There are whispers in physics, small but persistent, that time might not be as one-sided as we think. Some theories imagine universes where time flows backward, not as fantasy, but as mathematical possibility. In those reflections of our own cosmos, the past would not decay into the future. It would blossom from it. Entropy would run in reverse. Order would grow from chaos. What was broken would mend. What was burned would cool and rise. What was lost would return to its first state, as if the universe itself were exhaling all it had ever done. It's an unsettling picture, a mirror reality where cause follows effect in reverse, where every breath you take becomes unbreathed, every word retracted into silence, every life unwinding toward its first heartbeat. You would watch smoke pull itself together, curling back into the tip of a matchstick, unlit and waiting. Stars would grow heavier with the gas they had once burned, their ashes gathering themselves until the galaxies around them contract and condense. Even memory itself would be inverted. You would recall the future, not the past, knowing how everything ends before it begins. In such a universe, time would still exist, but its direction would mean something entirely different. What we call aging would become rejuvenation. What we call decay would be creation. You wouldn't see entropy as destruction, but as restoration. Yet that reversal, elegant on paper, has never appeared in reality. We have never seen a single broken cup leap off the floor and reassemble in midair. We've never watched ashes rise back into flame. Every atom in our experience follows one direction, one irreversible gradient toward greater disorder. So why does time always move forward here? Why does our universe refuse the symmetry that physics seems to promise? The equations that describe motion, energy, even quantum fields don't care which way time runs. They work just as well in reverse. Nature, however, has chosen a preference. Somewhere in the earliest instant of the cosmos, a direction was set, a simple asymmetry in an otherwise perfect beginning. It's as though the universe flipped a coin at its birth, and that coin decided the fate of every falling leaf, every heartbeat, every dying star that would ever exist. Perhaps the Big Bang wasn't just the origin of space, but of direction itself. Before that moment, there might have been no before. When the universe expanded from its first breath of energy, it created not just matter and motion, but a sense of sequence, the before and after that we now call time. From that first imbalance, entropy began to rise. Order slowly dissolved into complexity, then into chaos. Galaxies spun themselves from dust, stars lit and died, planets cooled, and somewhere on one small rock, life learned to measure time's passing by the swing of its own pulse. Every action since then has been built on that single silent decision. You can almost think of it as a cosmic commitment. Once made, it can't be unmade. Time's arrow was drawn across the canvas of existence, and everything followed. What's remarkable is how fragile that direction might be. A tiny change at the beginning, a different arrangement of energy, could have reversed it entirely. We could be living in a universe where our memories flow opposite to our actions, where we look back not with nostalgia, but with anticipation. Yet we aren't. Whatever happened at the start locked us into this one-way path, and we've been moving along it ever since. Still, the thought lingers. What if time's reversal isn't forbidden, only hidden? Maybe in some remote corner of existence, deep inside the folds of another dimension, entropy runs the other way. There could be universes like mirrors facing ours, their histories inverted, their beginnings our endings. From their perspective, we might be the ones running backward, undoing what they've done. The symmetry could exist just beyond what we can touch. In that sense, the one-way flow of time might not be absolute, but local, a product of where and how our universe began. A kind of cosmic bias set by the conditions of the Big Bang. Physics allows for both directions. Nature simply picked one. It's easy to forget how arbitrary that choice could have been, how fragile our understanding of forwardness really is. We think of time's direction as the most stable thing in existence, but it might just be an ancient habit of the cosmos. There's something poetic about that thought, that the universe, so vast and cold and seemingly mechanical, began with something that resembles preference, a leaning, a favor toward unfolding rather than retracting. Maybe it wasn't a conscious choice, but it feels like one. It gave rise to everything we recognize: growth, decay, evolution, memory. Without that imbalance, there would be no change, no story, no reason for us to mark moments at all. You could say that the forward flow of time is the universe's way of telling stories. Without it, there'd be no narrative, just a static tapestry where everything exists at once. The direction of time gives events meaning, weaving them into cause and effect, loss and discovery. It lets us move through existence rather than drown in it. The idea that this might have all started with a random flick of symmetry makes the present feel more miraculous. That from chaos came direction. From direction came consciousness. From consciousness came the ability to ask what it all means. Yet we can't help but wonder why reversal never happens. If entropy is just probability, then in theory, it's not impossible for things to spontaneously become more ordered. It's just so improbable that we never expect to see it. The universe would need to roll its dice for a near infinite number of lifetimes before even one broken glass mended itself. But deep down, in the smallest fluctuations of quantum reality, such reversals might flicker, fleeting, imperceptible corrections that come and go before we can notice. That's the quiet tragedy and beauty of it. Time could run backward, but it doesn't. It could unwind itself, but instead, it keeps going, pushing forward like a tide that never retreats. Maybe that's why our memories ache the way they do, because something inside us knows that backward isn't impossible, only forbidden. We can recall the past, replay it, reshape it in thought, but we can never return to it. The laws of the cosmos are kind enough to let us imagine the reversal, but never to live it. Perhaps that's the lesson hidden in the symmetry we never see. The universe might be balanced at its core, but it needs imbalance to breathe, to evolve, to exist in motion. Time's direction, chosen at the dawn of everything, is what gives rise to experience itself. Without it, there would be no forward, no backward, no difference between being and having been. Just stillness, eternal, flawless, and meaningless. It's humbling to think that all of history, Every civilization, every heartbeat, every dying star might be the consequence of a single direction chosen once, 13 billion years ago. A flip of a coin that set reality into motion. Had it landed the other way, everything we know would unspool backward. Yet here we are, caught in this flow, drifting downstream, aware of what's behind us, but blind to what's ahead. The universe, it seems, made its choice long ago. Time's reversal never comes, not because it can't, but because it already did, at the very start when everything began to unfold. What we call forward is just the echo of that decision reverberating through the ages, a single pulse expanding into eternity. But if time began with the Big Bang, what happens when it ends? There's a silence waiting at the far end of everything, so distant it feels less like a moment to come and more like a truth that's always been there, quietly waiting. Physicists call it the heat death of the universe, a point so far ahead that stars have burned their last drops of fuel, galaxies have drifted apart beyond sight, and all that remains is darkness so uniform that nothing can happen anymore. No flicker, no pulse, no change. When the final atom gives up its stored energy, entropy reaches its peak. Every difference smooths into sameness. Every spark fades into evenness. In that state, the universe is still vast, still full of space, but empty of contrast. There are no gradients left for energy to flow across, no imbalance to drive movement, no unevenness to mark the passing of time. The great cosmic machine, once roaring with stars, will have cooled into stillness. It won't be a dramatic ending, no explosion or collapse, just a gradual quieting, a dimming of light so slow you could stretch eternity across it. Time, as we know it, depends on change. Every second is a comparison between two states, before and after, motion and rest, cause and result. But when change becomes impossible, when everything is too balanced to move, then time loses its footing. Not because it stops, but because it has nothing left to measure. The metronome of the cosmos doesn't break, it just finds no reason to swing anymore. In this far future, black holes will have evaporated, stars long gone, planets dust, atoms drifting endlessly in a space colder than thought itself. Even light, that final whisper of the universe's once burning youth, will stretch until its energy is so faint it can no longer stir the smallest particle. There will be no warmth, no motion, only an infinite hush. The universe won't end with a bang, but with a sigh so soft that nothing will hear it. The strange thing is, time might still exist in theory, ticking quietly in equations that no longer describe anything happening. It becomes a word with no reference, like a clock ticking in an empty room, its hands moving over nothing. In this future, time loses meaning not because it disappears, but because meaning itself has. There will be no events to arrange, no moments to separate. Everything will be frozen not in space, but in significance. It's hard to think of that without feeling something heavy in the chest, a quiet grief for the music that once filled the universe. But maybe it's not tragedy. Maybe it's just the natural completion of a story that began in a burst of brilliance. The cosmos expanding, cooling, organizing itself, only to slowly dissolve back into equilibrium, like a wave rising and falling, like a breath drawn and released. The heat death isn't an ending, it's an exhale, the universe letting go. Our minds, wired to crave movement, struggle with the idea of stillness lasting forever. It feels like erasure, like the ultimate silence. But maybe, from a larger view, it's not destruction at all. The atoms that once built stars and hearts and thoughts will still exist, spread thinly across eternity. The information of all things, diffused but not lost. In quantum terms, nothing ever truly disappears. It only changes form. Perhaps in the quiet after everything, that information remains, a faint residue of what once was. The universe, in its deep rest, could still be remembering. There's something haunting about imagining a cosmos with no clock. Not because it would be dark, but because darkness would no longer even mean the absence of light. There would be no contrast left to define it, no observer to witness it. Time and perception might dissolve together, merging into something wordless. The arrow of time, which began at the Big Bang, would finally flatten. Every process that once pushed forward would come to rest, like waves fading into a perfectly still sea. Some physicists say that when entropy reaches this state, the concept of before and after will cease to apply. The universe will be timeless, not because it's frozen, but because it will have achieved absolute equilibrium. A balance so complete that even the idea of movement will no longer make sense. That's what makes the heat death so strange. It's both an ending and a kind of perfection. It's not chaos, but perfect order, the end of contrast, the leveling of every mountain into the same smooth plane. But in another sense, it's also the quiet triumph of time. After all, it's time that leads everything toward this stillness, time that turns the furnace of stars into the gentle cold of space. The story of the universe isn't one of defiance against entropy, it's a dance with it. Every structure, every pattern, every burst of creation was borrowed from the inevitable drift toward disorder. Even beauty itself exists only because it's temporary, a momentary defiance before the calm returns. Perhaps then, the heat death is not a failure, but fulfillment, the point where the universe no longer needs to evolve, where every possibility has already been explored. In the same way a fire doesn't mourn the ash it leaves behind, the cosmos might not mourn its stillness. It will have lived its story fully, from chaos to complexity, from birth to quiet. The river of time that began as a torrent will have finally reached the ocean, no longer flowing because it has nowhere left to go. And yet, deep inside that stillness, a question stirs. Is that truly the end? Or could something, anything, emerge from that silence again? Quantum physics whispers that even in the emptiest void, fluctuations can arise, tiny sparks of imbalance that could one day swell into new universes. Perhaps the heat death is not a death at all, but the soil from which new creation grows. A reset, not an erasure. It's comforting, in a strange way, to think that time's silence might not be permanent. That after the long stillness, another beginning could unfold, like a heartbeat returning after a deep sleep. Perhaps the universe will one day awaken from its calm, its symmetry broken once more, birthing a new arrow of time, a new cascade of stars, a new story to tell. If so, then the heat death is not the end of time, only a pause in its endless rhythm. The great metronome doesn't stop, it rests between measures, gathering itself for another song. In that rest, the universe dreams. But maybe time doesn't end. Maybe it simply loops. There's a quiet beauty in the thought that the universe might not be a straight path from beginning to end, but a circle, a rhythm that returns to itself. What if everything we call history, every lifetime and every star, is part of an endless loop, expanding, dissolving, and blooming again, over and over, like the breathing of something vast and ageless? Cyclic cosmology whispers this possibility, that after the final stillness, after the heat death's long night, the universe could stir once more. Not as a repetition of what was, but as a renewal. The same laws, the same music, playing again in a different key. In this vision, the universe expands from its birth, stretches toward its edge, then folds back upon itself. Energy gathers, collapses, ignites again. A new Big Bang follows the last, as inevitable as dawn. Each cycle becomes a universe of its own, each one carrying faint traces of those before it. Like echoes that never fully fade, their memory ripples through time, whispering across eons that the story has been told countless times and will be told again. If the cosmos is indeed circular, then time is not a straight river flowing toward an ocean, but a tide that returns, each wave tracing the same path in different light. The idea itself feels ancient, not modern science, but something older than mathematics. The Stoics once believed in the Great Year, a cosmic cycle in which the universe is reborn after a grand conflagration. Hindu philosophy speaks of kalpas, vast ages of creation and dissolution, where Brahma awakens and dreams existence into being, only to close his eyes again, resting before the next beginning. Even Nietzsche, staring into the heart of human meaning, wondered if we might live our lives endlessly, each moment destined to repeat exactly as it has before. The thought can feel both terrifying and soothing. Terrifying because it implies we are trapped in an eternal repetition, forever bound to the same destinies, the same joys, the same mistakes. Soothing because it suggests that nothing is truly lost. Every laugh, every sunset, every heartbeat will come again. The universe itself becomes its own memory, endlessly reciting its poem through the ages. From a scientific point of view, cyclic cosmology offers a kind of hope against finality. The heat death, that quiet horizon of nothingness, might not be a wall but a door. When space becomes uniform, When entropy has exhausted all contrast, quantum fluctuations might stir again, small waves in the silence giving birth to new beginnings. Energy could pool and fold inward, gravity reversing expansion into contraction until everything collapses into a single point of impossible density. Then, from that pressure, another explosion, another Big Bang, another arrow of time. What's haunting is the possibility that each rebirth may not start from absolute zero. Perhaps each new universe inherits subtle imprints of the ones before, faint structures, background echoes, or constants shaped by cosmic memory. Some physicists have even speculated that the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, could hold traces from earlier cycles, like fingerprints pressed into the fabric of existence. If so, we are not just living in a universe born from nothing, but in a story mid-chapter, one that began long before we arrived and will continue long after we fade. In a looping cosmos, time doesn't need shortcuts because it never runs out of road. It folds back on itself, endlessly patient. The future and the past become neighbors in the circle's curve. Every rise carries the promise of a fall, every end a beginning. The arrow of time becomes not a straight flight into oblivion, but a spiral, always moving, never lost. There's a strange intimacy in that. It means the atoms that make you, the light that touches your skin, the thoughts that cross your mind, might have lived through this before, countless times. Each cycle, they find new forms, new constellations, new arrangements of possibility. Maybe somewhere in another turn of the circle, you have already sat under this same sky, wondering about time. Maybe this question, why it never takes shortcuts, is itself part of the rhythm, asked eternally by countless minds across countless ages, each one thinking they are the first. In such a universe, death loses its sharpness. Nothing truly ends, it simply changes role in the next act. The stars that die give birth to others. The particles that dissolve into dust become the soil of new worlds. Even time's decay becomes time's rebirth. There's something profoundly comforting in that. The thought that the universe isn't racing toward an edge, but turning, softly, like a wheel that never stops. The human heart, too, seems to understand this rhythm. We see it mirrored in nature, in the seasons that fade and return, in the heartbeat that rises and falls, in sleep and waking, in loss and renewal. Life itself may be the universe remembering its own pattern. Our sense of time as linear might simply be the illusion of perspective, like standing on one point of the circle and thinking it's a line because we can't see the curve. Perhaps eternity isn't endless time, but recurring time, the same melody playing across infinite variations, each version slightly different, yet familiar. That could explain why some experiences feel timeless, why certain moments strike with such déjà vu, as if we've stood there before. Maybe we have, not in memory, but in recurrence. The universe, in its quiet way, might be reminding itself through us. If time truly loops, then its purpose is not progress, but expression. Not a journey to a destination, but a dance without end. Every cycle allows existence to rediscover itself. The same laws, the same beauty, the same questions, reborn in new forms. The universe doesn't seek completion because it already contains everything within its turning. Still, the looping cosmos raises a deeper mystery. If every cycle repeats, if every moment happens again, where does meaning live? Does repetition make it less or more? Maybe meaning isn't found in novelty, but in recognition, in the awareness that even within endless recurrence, each moment still feels singular, still carries its own quiet astonishment. The sunrise doesn't lose its wonder because it's come before. It remains miraculous precisely because it returns. In that sense, time's loop might be the ultimate form of patience. The cosmos doesn't rush toward an ending because it already knows the way back home. It doesn't take shortcuts because every step of the circle is necessary, every turn a reminder of what it means to exist at all. So maybe eternity isn't a line stretching forward, but a breath cycling forever, inhaling creation, exhaling dissolution. Maybe we are not trapped in it, but part of it, brief expressions of an infinite rhythm, aware for a moment before returning to silence. And yet, there's still a whisper underneath all of this, a question that refuses to fade. If the universe is a circle, then what is it that watches the circle turn? What stands outside the loop, seeing its pattern? What gives the turning meaning? Perhaps the answer is closer than we think. Perhaps time isn't out there at all, but something we create with meaning. Every heartbeat is a small reminder that time isn't just something we move through, but something that moves through us. Each pulse, each quiet inhale is the body's way of counting what the stars call seconds. The rhythm of life itself becomes a kind of metronome, keeping time not with numbers, but with feeling. In that sense, the human body might be the most intimate clock in the universe, one that doesn't measure distance between events, but the depth of being alive between them. When we were children, time stretched wide, slow, and forgiving. Summers felt endless. A single day could hold entire adventures, and the space between morning and night seemed like a world of its own. But as we grow, that stretch begins to shrink. The same hour that once felt vast now slips past unnoticed. The ticking doesn't speed up, we just become more aware of what each tick takes away. Time becomes less about the passing of events and more about the passing of ourselves through them. We begin to measure life not in minutes, but in memories. Every joy leaves a trace, every loss carves a mark. The things we love, people, places, even moments, become our way of translating time into meaning. A photograph freezes a smile, a song anchors a season, a scent pulls us back into a memory that has long dissolved into air. Our lives are filled with these small attempts to hold on to something that refuses to stay still. The irony is that this constant slipping away is what gives everything its worth. We feel the beauty of a moment precisely because it's temporary, because it cannot be repeated exactly as it was. In that fragile impermanence, time transforms from a cold measurement into something tender. It's as though time becomes aware of itself through us. The universe, vast and indifferent, doesn't know what it means to wait, to miss, to long for something that's gone. But through human eyes, time gains a pulse. We give it heartbeats, laughter, silence, memory. When a mother watches her child sleep, or a lover waits by a window for someone who will not return, time bends and breathes in ways no clock could ever record. In those moments, time isn't just a background. It becomes alive within us. Maybe that's why we tell stories. Each one is an act of rebellion against the inevitable flow. Stories stretch moments, rewind them, hold them still long enough for meaning to unfold. We take something fleeting and make it eternal in words. Every story, in its own quiet way, slows time down. It gives form to the invisible current that sweeps us along. When we speak of our past, we're not merely recalling it, we're resurrecting it. Through memory and imagination, we pull pieces of time back into the present, allowing the universe to witness itself once more. We often think of decay as loss, but in truth, it's transformation. The falling leaf, the wrinkled hand, the fading light at dusk, all are evidence that time is doing what it must. Yet through human perception, this process becomes beautiful. We turn decline into art, endings into wisdom, silence into meaning. Perhaps that's what makes us unique, our ability to see the poetry in impermanence. The universe doesn't mourn its dying stars, but we do, and in doing so, we turn cosmic indifference into tenderness. In a way, the human experience is time's attempt to look back at itself. Our awareness turns duration into understanding, chaos into narrative. When we pause to reflect on how quickly the years have passed, we're not lamenting their loss so much as marveling that they ever existed at all, that they left something behind, not in space, but in us. Each moment that slips away leaves a trace in our consciousness, shaping the texture of who we become. Perhaps time never takes shortcuts because meaning can't. It takes an entire lifetime to learn what it means to live one. The long unfolding of experience, with all its quiet seasons and sharp turns, is the only way the universe can understand its own story. To rush it would be to skip the very thing that makes existence worth noticing. A sunset wouldn't move us if it lasted forever. A song wouldn't touch us if it didn't end. Even love, in its finite form, becomes sacred precisely because it's borrowed from eternity, destined to return. There's something deeply humbling in realizing that our awareness is the universe's way of keeping time. Every second we live is a moment the cosmos has chosen to observe itself through human eyes. When we gaze at the stars, we're not just looking outward. We're participating in a cycle of perception that loops back on itself. The light we see left those stars long before we existed, yet now, through us, it finds a witness. Time connects the two ends of the loop, the star that burned billions of years ago and the mind that now remembers its glow. In this sense, awe might be the purest form of timekeeping. It's the moment when the human clock, the rhythm of breath and pulse, synchronizes with the rhythm of the universe. In awe, time seems to expand again, like it did when we were children. Seconds stretch open, filled with stillness. We feel the present moment in full, uncut form, no longer racing forward, but suspended in awareness. That pause, that widening of the now, might be as close as we come to eternity while still breathing. Our ancestors tried to measure time by the movement of the sun, the waxing of the moon, the migration of stars across the night sky. But long before we built clocks, we felt time in our bones, in hunger, in rest, in growth. The beating heart predates the ticking watch. Every life is a rhythm written into flesh. Every generation hands that rhythm forward, carrying the same cosmic tempo that's been pulsing since the first spark of life in the ocean. Even as we create new machines to count milliseconds, the truest measure of time remains unchanged. It's the pulse we feel in the quiet between thoughts. The strange gift of being human is that we can turn time's passage into meaning. We mourn, we celebrate, we remember. We turn transience into story, entropy into emotion. Through us, the cold mechanics of physics become something more, something that feels. Maybe that's what the universe has been waiting for all along. For consciousness to emerge, to give its ticking clock a reason to be noticed. For someone, somewhere, to look up at the stars and say, "This is beautiful." So perhaps time isn't something outside us, flowing independently through an indifferent cosmos. Perhaps it's something woven through awareness, something that exists only because we notice it. The universe may stretch and fold and loop forever, but meaning is born only where there's someone to witness it. Maybe that's why the universe takes its time, quite literally, to become conscious of itself. Through the slow rhythm of life, through the fragile heartbeat that marks the distance between birth and death, it learns what it means to exist. Time, through us, becomes story. Story becomes memory. Memory becomes eternity. So when we speak of the end of time, perhaps there is none. There's only the pause between beats, the stillness before the next note. Because the final answer might not be about physics at all, but about awe, that quiet astonishment that something exists instead of nothing, that moments rise and fall like waves, that even as everything changes, something inside us recognizes the beauty of the passing itself. There are moments that don't seem to belong to time at all. You know the kind, when something inside you goes completely still, as if the entire universe has paused to take a breath. It might happen under the slow bloom of a sunset, when the horizon melts into gold and violet, or when you hear a piece of music that seems to pull something ancient out of you. For a heartbeat, time doesn't move forward or backward. It widens. You fall into it, weightless, uncounting. In that pause, something inside whispers that this feeling right now, is what eternity must taste like. Maybe wonder is what time has been trying to become all along. The way the universe folds itself into awareness, one astonished glance at a time. When we stand in awe of something greater than ourselves, the seconds no longer march in a line, they bloom outward, filling every corner of perception. A single breath can hold a lifetime. A single instant can feel infinite. The world doesn't change in those moments, we do. Our attention expands enough to hold both the fleeting and the forever in the same palm. There's something extraordinary about how easily the human mind slips out of time through wonder. A scientist staring at the delicate curve of a nebula feels it. A child watching snowfall for the first time feels it too. In both cases, the awareness of duration fades, replaced by presence so complete that it swallows the clock whole. We stop measuring the world and start experiencing it. The second hand keeps moving, but it no longer matters. Because in awe, we aren't moving through time anymore. We're meeting it face to face. In that stillness, the edges of things soften. The distinction between what's inside and what's outside begins to blur. The boundaries of self dissolve into something vaster, something wordless. The air feels thicker, quieter, almost sacred. It's as though the universe leans closer for a moment, letting us glimpse its pulse beneath all the noise. What we call wonder might just be time revealing its true form, not a straight line, not a cycle, but an ever-deepening now. It's strange to think that the universe's greatest shortcut might be emotional, not physical. No wormholes, no time machines, no bending of space-time. just awareness so intense that it compresses infinity into a single breath. In awe, duration loses meaning because we've stepped into the raw presence from which all duration comes. That's the secret physics of wonder. It doesn't suspend time. It makes time irrelevant. The ticking fades, the counting stops, and what's left is existence itself, bare and complete. Every great discovery begins this way. Long before the formula, there's the silence of recognition, that wide-eyed moment when reality shows its face. The scientist who first realizes the nature of gravity, the artist who catches a glimpse of beauty they can't explain, the poet who suddenly understands why a word feels alive, all of them are brushing against the same thing. They've slipped into a layer of time where curiosity becomes communion. It's the universe meeting itself in the mirror of consciousness, astonished by its own reflection. Maybe that's why we chase wonder, again and again, in 1,000 forms. Through art, through science, through love. Each one a different path toward the same horizon. We build telescopes not just to see the stars, but to remember that we come from them. We paint and write and sing because meaning is how we translate eternity into human language. Every time we reach for something beyond comprehension, we're not escaping time, we're fulfilling it. It's tempting to think of wonder as a luxury, something delicate and fleeting. But in truth, it's a fundamental human need. It reconnects us to the vastness we came from, reminding us that the smallness we feel is not a flaw, but a form of belonging. Awe humbles us, but it also heals us. It folds us back into the rhythm of things, reminding us that every second we live is already part of something immense. There's a quiet symmetry in the fact that the most profound moments of our lives, the ones that feel eternal, often take only a second. The first cry of a newborn, the last look before goodbye, the sudden realization that you are loved. In those moments, something deeper than time stirs awake. The boundaries between before and after vanish, replaced by a stillness that feels infinite. The physics of emotion and the physics of the cosmos meet in perfect silence. The universe, it seems, has hidden eternity in plain sight, not in the distant edges of galaxies, but in the folds of ordinary life. In the reflection of sunlight on water, in the laughter that lingers after a story ends, in the quiet breath you take after something beautiful has passed. Each heartbeat carries a tiny echo of forever. Each thought is a spark struck against the darkness of time. When we pay attention, even the simplest things begin to shimmer with depth. The ticking of the clock becomes music instead of measurement. Perhaps this is the real reason time never takes shortcuts. Because wonder is the only place where the journey and the destination merge into one. The path itself becomes sacred. Every delay, every detour, every pause is not a flaw in the system, but a verse in the song. The universe doesn't rush because it isn't heading anywhere. It's learning, unfolding, expressing. Through us, through everything that breathes and burns, it's experiencing itself in endless variation. The more we grow, the more we realize that life's greatest meaning is not found at the finish line, but in the awareness of the step we're taking now. We keep searching for the end of the path, but the secret is that there isn't one. Time's true purpose might not be to carry us forward, but to let us notice, to let us see how each fleeting instant contains the whole of everything. The present moment is both the smallest unit of existence and the largest. It's the doorway through which infinity enters the ordinary. Somewhere, perhaps, the universe keeps track of all these moments. Not as a list, not as a timeline, but as a field of experience. Every instant of wonder, every act of kindness, every spark of curiosity might ripple through existence in ways we can't yet understand. Maybe that's what immortality really means. Not living forever, but leaving impressions that never fade from the pattern of being. In that sense, awe is not an escape from time, but its fulfillment, the point where the measurement meets the meaning. When we stand at the edge of something beautiful, a horizon, a mystery, a truth, we feel the weight of time not as pressure, but as presence. The universe becomes briefly transparent, showing us that behind all the motion and noise lies something still and eternal. That stillness is what we call wonder. It's the moment we stop trying to reach eternity and realize we've been inside it all along. So perhaps the universe doesn't need shortcuts, because wonder itself is the only one that matters. It's the bridge between the finite and the infinite, between the ticking of the clock and the timelessness beneath it. Every breath, Every heartbeat, every gaze into the night sky is a reminder that the journey is the destination. Time has never been in a hurry. It doesn't need to be. It moves at the pace of awe, one heartbeat at a time. Time has been our companion since the first flicker of light. It doesn't rush. It doesn't stumble. It moves with quiet certainty, patient, unstoppable, and deeply mysterious. We've seen it bend under gravity, hide inside perception, and dissolve at the universe's edge. We've followed it from the birth of atoms to the sleep of galaxies, and still it refuses to take a shortcut, because shortcuts belong to those who can't see the whole journey. Time sees everything. It doesn't need to skip ahead. It is the story, written one frame at a time by every star, every life, every thought that's ever existed. Perhaps that's the secret. Time never hurries because it already contains all destinations. It lets us move slowly to notice, to feel, to remember. So tonight, let's rest inside its flow. Let the seconds pass like soft waves against the shore of your mind. Let the universe breathe through you, one long, endless sigh. And when you drift into sleep, remember, you're not escaping time. You're returning to it. Good night, and may your dreams take the longest shortcut of all.